Hi, what is your name and profession?
My name is Breanne, and I am a administrator at a school.
Okay, so how old were you when 9/11 occurred?
I was 16 years old.
What was your reaction when you first heard about the crash into the Twin Towers?
Well, I was in my AP biology class during my senior year in high school, and they called us, some of the students, down to the office, the part of our school council people down, because they had to lock down our entire school. So we found out as they were switching the flights that were flying into Washington, D.C. and Boston, and derailed them to fly into Montreal, into the next major city, so that the flight path would not be over New York City. So they called us all down, and they had us help get our auditorium set up, and we were locked down for 10 hours with no communication, really, because it was before cell phones were really a big thing. And so there was no, our principals and administrators and teachers were talking back and forth with parents and things like that, but we as students were on a lockdown for almost 10 hours that day.
So when you got out of that lockdown, who did you reach out to first?
My parents. My dad actually at the time was working. He telecommuted, which is what they used to call remote work, and part of his job was down in Manhattan. And so, but my dad luckily wasn't working that weekend and was at home because we lived in Vermont. And so, but a lot of his coworkers and people that we knew, just through his company friends and everything. So I called my dad.
Okay. For how long after the attacks did you hear about it?
Pretty much the entire school year. A lot of the first responders from our communities went down and helped support with the cleanup and everything, and reestablishing ground zero and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so even on our graduation day, we had one of the chief firefighters from Manhattan down in the business district. He came and he spoke at our graduation, and they dedicated, they brought a piece of the Twin Towers, the glass that had fallen, and they created the sculpture and donated it to our school. So he was our speaker at our graduation. So it was really impactful in our community, just because so many people who lived there in our town worked in the big city, because it was an easy commute.
How long do you think it took to clean up, to return to normal?
Years and years and years.
How does 9/11 affect you today?
Well, I think that it was a cultural shift for a lot of people. The way that we look at travel and all of that is completely different than what it was. I mean, prior to 9/11, it was so impactful, but now we live in such a transient society and stuff like that, that the effect really is still impactful, even though it's so common to travel, going through security in the airport, or even just the perception of groups or organizations, religious, non-religious, that kind of. So I feel like it's still impactful today.
Okay, and that leads into my next question. Why do you think people didn't make the security better before that?
I feel in general, as a society, that I feel as a society that we generally don't want to see the bad in humans and stuff like that. And you have to remember 25 years ago or so, the media there wasn't social media, news wasn't right in your face, and so it took time, and it was more selective of the news that was shared and stuff, so you weren't as exposed to the negativity, I guess you could say, and so the perception of the human race wasn't as, I don't think it was as negative back then as it was now, and so that need to feel like you were always on guard, I don't think was as established as it is today.
Okay. So, how do you think it made America worse?
Made America worse?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty complicated question. I don't know if it necessarily made America worse. I feel like it made it different. So there's always pros and cons. So
what about better? How did it make America better?
I think that post 9/11 there was a lot of patriotism and unification across the United States. It was an event that impacted, it didn't matter where you lived, there was a strong impact on it, and so it was experienced by so many that they had a common denominator that they could all relate to, whether or not they had the same perception of it or not. It was just kind of a sense of unity and need to kind of unite as a nation. That was a pretty positive time, I think, for Americans.
Yeah. Okay. Why do you think they aimed for the centers of capitalism and commercialism?
That's actually, well, I mean, I think that capitalism or the economy is kind of one of the foundational driving forces of society, especially in first world, well, even in third world countries, any kind of country, it's based around the economy and things like that. And so if you feel like you need to take down something powerful, you're going to go for something that's going to have a large effect. And so by targeting capitalism, which is a foundational component of America's economy, it could really affect a broader people than on a more abstract level than just on a physical level, like those that were in the World Trade Center or those that were at the Pentagon.
Why do you think they went there?
The same reason they went for the Capitol. Was a place where a lot of our security and everything, all of that information and everything, and so if they hit the heart of our security, then it had a greater influence than if they had just, hit some small, army base or things like that. So it's like a central communication place that had a more profound effect.
Okay. And this is kind of a bigger picture type of question. What were the far-reaching social and political ramifications of the 9/11 attacks, both within the United States as well as on a global scale?
That is also a very complex question. Socially and politically, I mean, from a sociological perspective, there definitely was this idea of religion and the effect of religion and the purpose of religion, and kind of theologically the different values in various religions and how does that play into politics, and is there that separation of state and religion anymore, church and state, because now every religion was under the microscope and differences were looked as bad as opposed to uniqueness and things like that. And so I think that it created a lot of platforms for a lot of political campaigns afterwards. On a global scale, the relationship between the United States changed drastically with many countries, with the United Nations and things like that, those that were in support of the United States, those that weren't in support, and obviously later on when we decided to participate in wars overseas and things like that, and those were saying we shouldn't be doing that because of the effect it had on the United States, and others saying no, we need to because we are powerful and we're the only resource that can help turn things around. And so, yeah, we're still having those debates today.
All right, well, thank you for your time, Miss Breanne.
Of course.